We are multidimensional beings, as in we can be in more than one place at the same time. This can be a hard concept to grasp for the human mind, but I do have a story about my out of body experience that I had when I was in labor with my daughter 7 years ago. This happened to me a while ago, but it's actually a pretty cool story. Having my out of body experience helped me grasp the concept of being multidimensional. With a lot of people's out of body experiences or stories that you hear or near death experiences, a lot of the time they are unconscious or they died. And that's when they have their out of body experience. But I was actually fully awake. My human self was fully awake while I was out of my body. So I'm not going to get too much into my labor. I have two children. I have a 7-year-old and a 1-year-old. And with my 1-year-old, I had a really grounded, kind of normal labor experience. And with my daughter, I had a way more spiritual, painful experience. With my daughter, my contractions were so severely painful that this might sound strange if you've given birth and might not make sense, but they were in my entire body instead of where they should be. It was like head to toe. Like they wouldn't stop. They wouldn't even stop for a second. I never got a break from them, and I was in back labor. It was extremely painful, and even after having my son, I'm like, yeah, why was my labor so bad with my daughter? But every baby's different, every labor is different, and it also took me a while to get to the hospital with my daughter, and with my son, I got induced, so the worst part for me with my son was seriously the epidural. And with my daughter, I was in so much pain that I couldn't even feel the epidural. I was suffering so bad. If you've ever been in severe physical pain, you just want out of your body. You just want to be done. You're done. And I was in that state of mind. I was in my head like, God, get me out of my body. Get me out of my body. Well, I was about to get my epidural and the nurses had to hold me down because I couldn't stop moving because I was in so much pain. I couldn't hold still. And that is when my soul decided to leave my body because I could not take it anymore. Now, when it happened, I wasn't aware that I was having an out-of-body experience until a couple weeks later. I started to remember it. And it makes me wonder how many times people have had an out-of-body experience and just don't remember. But I was suddenly floating above my body as a ball of energy. I had no eyeballs. I couldn't talk. I was just an observant ball of energy. And I felt like I was in the perspective of my higher self. I could see the whole room from a 360 point of view, like a fisheye lens. And like I said, I'm like a ball of energy, like static almost, I guess you could say. And I was just observing everything from kind of the sidelines, if you will. And below me was the hospital room, and above me was like space. It was like outer space, which is interesting. Like the ceiling was gone. There was no ceiling. I was looking down into the room from a higher dimension. Like I said, I was in space. I was in like a higher dimension. And I was looking down on myself and I was watching myself, be in pain, being held down by the nurses and all that while they were trying to give me the epidural. And I just had awareness. Like I didn't have emotion. I just had awareness. It's so weird, but you don't really have the emotions when you're in the higher realms like you do down here on Earth. I remember looking above my human body and seeing my 3 spirit guides. Now, a little backstory. When I was a child, I used to astral project, and I would meet up with my spirit guides and have conversations with them. One of them is a blue avian, a birdman, and the other ones I don't really recognize their faces very well. It's kind of hard to see their faces, but they kind of would glow bluish, like white and blue. Anyways, so that kind of confirmed to me that those were not dreams, that I really was astral projecting as a child, which I'm convinced everybody does, whether you remember it or not. But I was seeing my spirit guides and they were holding their arms out like they were doing some type of ritual, like they were above my human body. I don't know if they were sending my daughter's soul down or what was going on. I don't know. I was just observing. And then I noticed there was a different being, and It was an angel, and the way the angel was presented to me was, it looked like, your typical angel, like, like a human figure. It was a woman. She was huge though. Like, angels are really big. Like, they're very divine beings, and they're huge, like way bigger than your spirit guides, way bigger than a human, gigantic. And the one thing that was weird about this angel though is her dress was like part of her, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't separate from her. And instead of having legs, she had a tail, like Casper. Like, she literally had a tail. So that was kind of weird. I remember seeing that and being like, okay. But eventually, after kind of just hanging out there for a little while, I decided to go down closer to my body. I can't explain this. Like, your thoughts, the second you have a thought, you're doing that thing. Like, you don't think of something and then it happens. It's happening as it's a thought, if that even makes sense. I decided to go down closer to my human body, and I took on, instead of being this like ball of energy, I took on my light body form. So I was, I guess you could say, the ghost of my human self. And the weird thing is, I actually went and merged with the guy who was giving me an epidural. I went into his body and I gave myself the epidural through him. I don't know why I did that. I was just like, here, let me help. And I did that. And then I stepped out of his body, and then I went back into mine. So, I didn't feel like I was up there for long. I think angels especially can literally merge with you and help you do things. Like, people who are surgeons and stuff, it makes me wonder if angels are like working through the humans to like do stuff, because that's how it feels, and that's what I did. So, but yeah, it made me realize the perspective of the higher self, because I felt like I switched places with my higher self, or I was in the perspective of my higher self. I didn't have ego. I had love, but the love was even different than down here. I can't even explain it. I had no worries. I didn't feel any pain. Nothing was scary, which this experience has also kind of helped me not fear death, because you'll be fine. Like, it's fine. You're just going to go back to where you came from at the end of the day. But yeah, so that's my story of seeing an angel and having an out-of-body experience. I, like I said, didn't remember that I had an out-of-body experience until like a week or two after I got home. I just was sitting there and I'm like, wait a minute. Why do I remember why do I remember giving myself the epidural? Why do I remember seeing an angel? All of the memories just came flooding back to me, and I'm like, holy shit, like, whoa, I had an out-of-body experience. That's crazy. But yeah, we are multidimensional. We are in more than one place. So yes, the higher self is a very, very real thing. And your higher self is chilling right now in the higher realms, just watching you play out this video game that you're in. So, I hope this story kind of brings you peace and kind of reminds you that your soul chose to be down here, whether you want to believe that or not. And I know you're probably like, why would my soul choose this? Well, that's your human ego self who has to go through it. That's pissed off about it. But your higher self knows what they're doing. If you've ever had an out-of-body experience, let me know in the comments, because I've only met one other person who has had an out-of-body experience, or maybe two. I met a couple other people who have, and they kind of had the same perspective as me, especially like seeing everything from a 360 point of view. And it's just weird. It's super weird. But yeah, you can like shapeshift and all sorts of things. It's pretty cool. But I hope you enjoyed that story, and I'll see you in my next video.